Recorded. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is I guess is this the last in our series of crosswalks for EQIP? And what we've been doing is we are kind of going through if the decision is finally made, or we're processing the decision to switch from Prometheus to PACES, how it affects specific specialties. And we've done a series of them. So tonight we're doing urology. We've already done cardiology, GI, ortho, and I think we did a general one in our meeting as well. There's 4 or 5 videos related to this, and if anyone's really interested in learning more about what the value-based model would look like in PACES versus Prometheus for a specific episode, they can reach out to Jessica or myself, and we're happy to help. So I'm Gene Ransom. I'm the chair of the EQUIP committee, and I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Jessica from CRISP, who is going to get us started and moving as we explain what EQUIP for urology will look like under PACES as opposed to how it looked under Prometheus. Jessica, it is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Gene, and thanks everyone for being here. We may not need the whole hour, but just to kind of elaborate a little bit, the intention of these sort of series of webinars is to go in more detail about what the episodes look like in PACES compared to the current grouper that we use, Prometheus. So at a high level, one of the things that we know and one of the benefits to PACES is that there are about 1,000 different episodes that they have available. Some are in different stages of development, but quite a large arsenal. Versus Prometheus has about 100, a little shy of 100 episodes that have remained that 100 or so for the past couple years. They haven't really added on anymore. And where this comes into play is as we look at the crosswalk, there certainly seems to be at least one related episode for every single Prometheus episode that we have. However, there is some additional granularity or even specificity in the way that PACES does their episodes. And that typically has been where the core differences have appeared and some of what we can do to explain where some of the numbers may vary. At a high level, when we looked at the state in aggregate, overall performance and savings were what we see under the Prometheus grouper. So again, pretty high confidence that it's showing the same trends, but we would expect some differences within each of the subspecialties. So essentially, that's what we have here today. I'm gonna hand it to Nate from H Metrics, who's gonna go over high level what these crosswalks look like, what are the different episodes relationships, and what are some of the key differences that we may be seeing. And then we want to open it up to sort of discussion for things like that. These may be a little bit more straightforward, so there may not be as many decision points here, but of course want to ensure that we have proper input before officially going forward with our recommendation of PACES. So with that, Nate, I'll let you get started.
Thanks, Jessica. So like Jessica said, intent here is primarily to have a discussion. And since we only have a handful of episodes in this clinical area right now, really looking for thoughts and feedback on the breakdown of the episodes, looking down the road, kind of what you guys would like to see. Towards the end of the presentation, we've got some questions that we'll pose, but just generally looking for what information we can provide that is going to facilitate this transition, what information would be helpful. We've got a lot of data that we've run, but the question is always, how do we package that up to make it as useful as possible for participants to facilitate understanding and making sure that we're heading in the right direction? Now, for urology, the biggest change really comes with regards to the Prometheus episodes that are called SRF episodes. Those are episodes that are generally intended to be complications or ancillary to other episodes. And I know there was some concern entering into the second performance here that the volume in those was pretty low. Now, for a lot of the other specialty areas, we've done a complete model of the performance year 1 episodes and kind of compared those to a counterfactual, what would it have looked like under PACES. At this point, we don't have the full performance data for performance year 2. So I will caveat that we'll do some follow-up analyses once we do have a bit more information on how performance year 2 actually pans out, but did want to get this information in front of everybody so that we could discuss it. So just starting here in the middle, catheter-associated UTIs and the urinary tract infection episodes under Prometheus are both of these SRF episodes. And for those of you who haven't been as in the loop with regards to the Prometheus grouper, essentially these episodes, as I mentioned before, have to reach completion without being tied to any other episode in order to complete. And that's why we see that relatively low volume here, as well as the relatively high target prices, because that means that these are going all the way through the different Prometheus levels to complete without attachment. And all of those payments are getting associated with that specific episode. Under PACES, they treat episode relationships differently. So instead of having that implicit leveling and roll-ups that occur under Prometheus, each episode is considered kind of its own standalone episode. And then the PACES grouper outputs associations between different episodes that allow us to tie together indications and sequelae, relevant services, and things like that. And so you can see we get a really big volume boost in both of these definitions. Now, I will say, as of right now, this GU device and catheter complication episode under PACES is one of the ones that is not yet finalized. They're working on finalizing it right now, which means it's undergoing additional clinical review. At the national level, they're engaging different specialty societies to kind of make sure that those episodes have both been updated from kind of their baseline definition and sufficiently refined. So if folks have thoughts or feedback on these when we get into a bit more detail, we're definitely happy to bring that back to PACES. They've been really great collaborators with us, and we do have a chance to provide some input. But this GU device and complication episode is a bit broader than just catheter UTIs. It does include mechanical complications and some other areas. We'll show you towards the end of this the episode definition playbooks that we're putting together and we'll make available so you can see the actual codes that get pulled in. But long story short, we jump up to about 2,000 episodes statewide across the Maryland data set that we looked at. With an average price of around $9,000 associated with those complications. Again, a pretty big change from the Prometheus definition, but hopefully one that's going to meet more the aims of including this episode in EQIP and providing caretakers and providers an opportunity to take responsibility for those costs. Similarly, on the UTI side, much broader capture, because again, every single UTI that's showing up in the claims is triggering a potential episode. We can get into what the categorizations of that look like. But again, long story short, much higher volume. It's going to be much easier for folks to meet volume thresholds and actually perform interventions that would affect outcomes here and contain costs. So all in all, just a lot more opportunity. And again, we haven't completed any counterfactual analysis on this. We will be doing that as a follow-up so that we can see for the care partners who are actually participating in EQIP for performance year 2, kind of what that volume and cost breakdown would be. But just wanted to kind of provide the high-level numbers that we have right now. All of these are from the baseline period, 2019. So we'll make that available and let folks know when we have that. In terms of the 2 existing procedural episodes, pretty similar in terms of volume for the most part. The identification codes for TURP and prostatectomy are very similar. As a general rule, the costs are a little more carefully associated under PACES, and so you can see that the cost profiles are a little bit different. Now, obviously, we're not clinicians, so would be interested in getting more feedback. This obviously is a pretty big shift, but we're happy to provide additional data on this if one value versus the other seems closer. And again, these numbers are drawn from the statewide total, understanding that depending on the nature of a particular practice or clinic, the cost profile may vary. The target price is still going to be based entirely on each EQIP entity's own historical experience. So if a given participant has a higher or lower cost profile, we're not changing the way that we're assigning target prices, and everyone would get a new target price from the PACES system if and when we moved over for performance year 4 and onwards. So it would be a clean cutover. And then we can help to kind of explain the ways that those break out. There are 2 additional episodes of interest that pull up into the mapping here. And part of this we'll get into is a question of what would be the most helpful way to facilitate a smooth enrollment transition from the Prometheus system to PACES. But PACES does isolate out urinary endoscopies and TERPs combined with urinary endoscopies. You can see that accounts for some of the volume differential here between the overall TERP category. I believe these are just rolled into the Prometheus TERP episode, but they are broken out here. And we have a number of decisions that we can make around how enrollment works, whether we just include these combination episodes by default if you enroll in one of the component episodes, or if we just make these different episodes available for enrollment. As long as the episodes are finalized in the PACES grouper, either approach works, and it's just a question of what's going to help folks make that transition. One other piece that we've been highlighting for the other clinical specialties are the episode parameters. So these are basically the different factors that go into constructing an episode. The most impactful one for most episode areas or episode categories has been the look back and episode length. In this case, both TERP and prostatectomy have basically the same profile under both systems, so you won't really see a change there. And then with the UTI categories, there is a fairly significant difference in terms of what PACES looks at. Now we can customize these parameters fairly easy with the new grouper, but we are trying to keep as many of the default recommendations in place, especially for the first year, just so that we're not going off and doing too much additional modification to the base grouper before we get a lot of experience with it. But again, looking for input and feedback on kind of appropriateness and just kind of general information that would be helpful to inform folks as they're enrolling for these different episodes for the upcoming year. So next steps, this, as Jean mentioned, is our last specialty group meeting. So what we are going to do is make those individual episode playbooks available. I'll pull one up right after we finish this slide so we can kind of walk through what they look like for those of you who haven't had the chance to see one yet. We're going to work on figuring out recommendations for enrollment transition guides, e.g. how do I transition from my current enrollment under Prometheus to an equivalent enrollment under PACES. And then we are going to take all of the input and discussion points that we've heard in these meetings back, review them internally to the HSCRC, and then make final decisions about what the policy is going to look like for the first year under the PACES grouper, assuming that the transition does go forward. So I'll exit out really quickly now. So if I hop over, so the episode playbooks that we're making available are Excel workbooks that just contain all of the different parameters and sets of codes for each episode. There's one playbook per episode type. When you come in here on the left-hand side, you will have all of your basic episode definition criteria, like the episode name, look back period, length, things like that. I will note that there are some data elements that are explained in the PACES business logic. We can also make that available. But if you're looking at this and saying, well, what's close ID? What does rule mean? These are just different parameters that determine how the episode is constructed. And again, those are explained in more detail in the associated business logic documentation that we can make available to all of you. Second in line, all of the trigger codes for a given episode will be shown in this set of columns, along with the nomenclature used. Typically for trigger codes, it's going to be CPT codes, but that designation will be included here, so you can kind of call those out. I will note that the existing nomenclature kind of combined CPT and HCPCS codes. So you will see HCPCS codes labeled as CPT. That's something we may clean up in a future iteration, but for most purposes, hopefully this will clearly articulate what billing codes are being used to trigger the episode. And then the next 3 sections show the relevant diagnoses, relevant procedures, and relevant pharmacy codes as appropriate. Now, for most of these procedural episodes, you are only going to see relevant diagnoses that tie into the episode. But for some of the other episodes, you may see codes populated here. We would just note that for right now, pharmacy codes aren't included in EQIP, and that's really just a data use and availability case. We are looking into it. But in the interest of providing the entire definition, we have provided those where they're applicable, just so folks know. And it may be that in the future, we're able to incorporate those. The final section is association. So as I mentioned, the PACES grouper will make relationships between different related conditions dependent on what's identified in the claims. And this basically lists possible different associations that may end up being connected to the base procedure, depending on, again, the individual claims details. And these are generally going to be split into either sequelae, downstream effects that may or may not be complications, or they might just be outcomes, as well as indications for why a procedure may have been performed. And again, there is more business logic that goes into determining how these associations are set up. That information, again, is available in the business logic. So if you're seeing anything in this workbook that at face value doesn't quite make sense, that additional explanation would probably come from the additional logic that gets applied on top of these code sets. Coming back here, again, hoping to make this more of a discussion, and I know we only had a handful of episodes to go through, so that was fairly quick, but do want to hear if anyone has thoughts on the current breakout of the PACES episode categories, additional thoughts or concerns on the parameters or the aggregation with which PACES is collecting these episodes right now. And I guess more generally, just what additional information would be helpful for all of you in communicating and facilitating this transition to the physicians you're working with or to other stakeholders in your organization. Again, the HSCRC has done a lot of work to analyze this data, and it's just a question of, out of all that data, what do we need to package up and make available between now and the beginning of the enrollment period to kind of facilitate a transition and make sure everyone is comfortable with the direction we're heading in. And of course, happy to answer any other questions that may come up, with the caveat that, again, we're not clinicians, so we might have to go back to the PACES team with any more involved questions. Again, they're pretty responsive, so we'll definitely follow up after this call as needed to make sure that we respond to anything that does come up. But that's what we had for this evening. Jessica, William, anything I missed that you want to add in, or any other discussion points? I know this clinical area has been a bit more forward-looking than some of the others, so I wasn't sure if there were any other topics that we wanted to bring attention to at this point.
I don't have anything to add, Nate. I think you covered it nicely.
Same. I think we'd just love to hear from
So we'll open it up for questions now. Does anybody have any questions or discussions about the change that's potentially going to occur? Go ahead, Dr. Lodtret.
Thank you all very much for presenting this. I think the thing that I can't speak for anyone else. I know that the only current module that we were part of was prostatectomy, and it's hard to imagine where there's opportunity when the cost is cut in third. So I think we're going to need a lot more clarity on why that's so different. In preparation for possible enrollment in the future year, because it's already been a bit of a struggle to fully understand, the costs on the other side to try to cause savings, create savings. It's a lot harder when there's less cost in the system to begin with. So we really need some clarity on that.
Sounds good. We'll make a note to follow up on that. We can definitely provide a bit more detail on where those costs are getting allocated.
So Nate, is it a significant change in what's included in the bundle, Nate? Is that the reason?
Yep. And that's fundamentally all of the difference in cost profiles is just different ways of allocating what's related to an episode and what is not. There are some episodes that are more inclusive under PACES and others that are more restrictive. And so I think that's something that we'd probably go back to Dr. Steinberg, for example, and talk through with him. And then we can pull out some examples, and similar to what we did for, I think it was the GI specialty group, kind of map out here's, where those dollars are going, if not to this one, because in some cases it might be a related urological procedure. Again, not my area of expertise, but it might be that some of those dollars would be captured in those related episodes that we could then also either make available for enrollment or tie back into this episode to kind of reconstitute those costs to make sure that we're not removing any potential opportunities for savings during the transition.
And did we run, well, I guess the issue is we did run it both ways like we did with the others, obviously, right? Was there a significant change in savings?
No, for the most part, the savings across the board, again, speaking at the state level, were pretty consistent. I would need to go back and refresh my memory if there were significant shifts at the individual provider entity level. But again, we can do that. And
that was
reach out
my
to
recollection as well. I remember there were specialties where there were significant changes, but this was not one. So is it possible that is it possible that really it's this? Is it the same amount of money, just that in Prometheus there are 4 bundles and in PACES there are 6? Is that what's going on?
It could be. I would need to look into the details of these episodes a little bit more to get to it. Again, I'm a bit more familiar with the cardiac and ortho episodes than I am with the Euro episodes. So
no, that's totally cool. The only concern I have is that, and we have on here today, I see a couple hospital reps, and then I see 2 docs from Chesapeake, and then Dr. Holton is with Anne Arundel Urology. What the issue is that they don't have a whole lot of data, right? That they're unlike the ortho or the GI who have a whole year completed where they know exactly what they did. The urologists are going to be flying a little blind on when they make decisions next summer,
Yeah.
or they will, I guess they might possibly have theoretically a complete picture, right? Maybe not, right, Jessica? So the issue is that it's almost more important for them than anybody for us to really run these numbers for them so they can make a good decision, with regards to enrollment. And frankly, the more detail we can give them on the runs, even at the statewide level that's de-identified, that would be helpful, because then you can see, oh, we just have to sign up for all 6 episodes, or actually it looks like one doesn't even have enough to hit volume, but all 5 episodes, and we should get the same results. Or maybe we don't want to sign up for one of them for some reason. So we'll figure out how to get it back out, but I do think we really want to do that and maybe share that in some way with the urology docs. Does that make sense?
Yep, and part of the problem will just be for performance year 2. We won't have the completed data till May. And some of you may be aware there's been a infrastructure incident at Change Healthcare that may delay some of the results that we're getting back. So it really depends on when we're going to be able to get those final year 2 results back. We should, assuming everything goes according to schedule, we should have them before the enrollment period starts, and we'll definitely make that available. But we'll just have to see what we can do absent that. I think the other thing that we could do, we've been hesitating to make any counterfactuals that kind of assume association or enrollment, especially if there were new physicians who are coming on board during performance year 2.
Yeah.
We could try and look back into, using those same NPIs, what would have happened during performance year 1. It's just, we know that there are some doctors who just weren't practicing, during those earlier time periods, and we don't want to misrepresent anything simply because, physicians were practicing in different locations or just weren't practicing in the state during those earlier periods. So
I will say this though, Nate, the one thing is anything you can do before we make the decision on the bundles, because like with the other specialty where we're adjusting the PACE bundle a little bit, if you do something, we can look at it and say we might want to make some slight adjustments to the urology bundles, right? So if you can do anything now before we go and meet with CMMI in April and March, or I guess late March, early April, and then probably get finalized in May, the sooner you can run something that we can at least look at, even if it's taking 6 months of data and assuming that it's a year. And I know that's not a very good thing to do, but it's better than nothing, right? And then maybe we can see where we are and you know, at least make sure we don't have something crazy going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it. Again, depending on the episode, sometimes 6 months of data is actually worse than no data at all, because we don't want to be drawing the wrong conclusions from it. But
Right.
again, it just depends on what gets included and captured during, you know, in the claims processing timeline during a given period.
I
But,
don't wanna-
William and Jessica, we can circle up on Thursday and kind of talk through
Right.
what we might be able
I don't want to belabor the point, but I think if we can get more info, that would be helpful. That's all.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Jessica, do you want to add anything else?
No, I don't think so. I agree. I think kind of weeding out the differences between some of these target prices. We did make note there was a difference, a pretty big difference in the time length for, I think was it UTI and the catheter complication. Our preference is to go towards the default if we don't hear anything different, but by all means, if there is, once you get a chance to look at this and talk it up with other people, if there is strong support to potentially changing that, we're open to that conversation. But just sort of, if we don't hear anything, we will go with the default. So please let us know if that is not something that you feel would work with that type of episode. The procedure episodes are pretty straightforward and follow the same time length as Prometheus, but the other ones are a little bit different and would impact target price.
And Dr. Holton or Dr. Lowentritt or Dr. Kern or any of the other physicians on the call, if anybody would like more details on what's included in the group or something to look at it, to understand it, we're happy to share additional information. We can't share it broadly, but if we have a couple of clinicians who want to volunteer and really take a deeper dive in it, we're happy to do that. If there's someone who's really excited and wants to look at what all the inputs are and on the PACES, that would be great. So, or have suggestions, we're open to getting you more details. You can just reach out to Jessica and I, and we'll figure out how to get you what you need. And we'd love to have more help so we can make good decisions. I mean, obviously, remember, we're all aligned here.
Okay, well,
All right.
I think, yeah,
Anything
so we're
else?
not hearing much. We can send a follow-up email. Obviously, the slides and everything will be posted. We will follow up on that comment about the differences between prostatectomy and the numbers there. And our next larger group meeting is, I think, Friday, March 15th. That is sort of our internal deadline to make some of these decisions. There certainly is some still wiggle room if there's ongoing conversations, but just looking to have a bulk of the sense of what episodes we're doing and timing for things as we move into sort of the enrollment period in spring and summer. So hopefully we'll hear from you and we'll get you back some more information.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, guys.